Well, good morning and welcome to the latest in our In Conversation with series. I'm Sarah Austin, and we are running this series where we shine the spotlight on different entrepreneurs, business leaders, experts, all in their different fields. And the whole purpose of this is to get to know the person behind the business, to understand the business itself, to hear about the light bulb moments, to hear what drove the person to start the business, develop it in the first place. And this morning I'm going to be joined by Alicia Luba, who is from Oxbridge Applications. Feels like a really sort of timely I think moment to be doing this. A lot of people would have already applied for Oxbridge, but they also help people with medical school, law school, and also general applications to higher education and universities as well. And for anyone that's thinking about completing their UCAS form and things, this is a really big moment. I'm just going to send Alicia a invitation to join me on the screen. She just said good morning. Hi, morning, Alicia. Lovely to see you're with us. It's an October morning. It's very wet and windy outside, so it's a good moment to be catching up and hearing about what is going on. So, Alicia, I've sent you an invitation. I hope you've got that, and you just click on that, and hopefully you'll be able to join me. Here we go. That's looking. And I think it's really difficult. If it is either applying themselves or they've got a child that's applying. Hello, morning.
Hi, Sarah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. You're a little bit off centre on the screen. Can you see that?
No, I'll move around.
much better. Yeah, brilliant, perfect. Well, Alicia, morning. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Just saying, it's rather sort of wet and windy October morning, but it feels really timely because this sort of autumn time is a really important stage in a young person's life in terms of thinking about their application process, etc. to university. So we are delighted to have you on board.
Thank you.
What I was explaining is purpose behind these conversations that we have is to just sort of understand more about your background, learn about the business, what makes it unique, and then to drill down to see if there's some really sort of useful advice that you can share. So I kind of want to start at the beginning and know more about you, Alicia Luba. Tell us about your background and what led you to Oxbridge Applications in the first place.
Yeah, well, I've been with Oxbridge Applications now for about a decade. The business itself is much older than I am. It was founded by somebody called James Uffindell, who, when he was at school, realized that there wasn't really tailored advice being given about how to apply to Oxford or Cambridge successfully, unless perhaps you were at one of those particularly adept at those kind of applications, maybe sort of big five schools. But for everybody else, he felt you were very much having to scrabble about to understand that process yourself. He then had an Oxford graduate join the teaching staff at his school, who took a group of the boys to one side, gave them extra lessons, really put them through extension classes and taught them through the process. And that school went from getting, pretty basically nobody into Oxford and Cambridge to I think 11 of them in that year. James then read PPE at Oxford and realized, gosh, there's really something in this. People need this kind of advice, and founded Oxbridge Applications. He brought me on board about a decade ago now. I now run the business. I'm blessed to have a really lovely team. We're based in Waterloo Place, which is at the intersection between Lower Regent Street and St James. So it's a lovely place to meet families, have everybody come in and have consultations. And we have been working with thousands of students now by this point. We do the in-house Oxbridge support for schools like Wellington, Benenden, Downhouse, Bradfield College, Rodine. But most of the work we do is with families and with students coming to us privately for guidance on their application 1 year, 2 years, 3 years in advance.
Excellent. Well, it's really interesting that, lots behind your journey there, but also the journey behind the business. is like all good businesses, it's kind of driven out of a need, you know, through his
Yeah.
own experience, that it's that kind of slightly paying it forward thing where, you know, he had benefited. Then, you know, again, I imagine through huge amounts of hard work and application, was successful in his application to Oxbridge, and then has gone on to create a business in order to help others to follow in that same journey. So I think that's a really interesting story behind the business itself. And you know, tell us, I mean, you've told us a little bit about the services, but you know, but tell us more about the business itself, and exactly what you do, and the types of people that you can help.
Absolutely. So there's a full-time team of us in the office, all of whom are Oxbridge graduates. We have to be. We are consulting and giving advice to those young aspiring applicants. We're there to mentor them through the same pathway. I went to Oxford. A lot of my colleagues went to Cambridge. Some who are just showing off went to both, as the case may be. Quite a few, actually. And we will meet students and families in an initial private consultation from age 14 upwards. So we'll begin our work at that stage thinking about what kind of GCSEs they may have selected or be selecting, what sort of grade profile you might be looking at, thinking about these subject choices would potentially lead to these A-level choices or these higher level IB choices. Sometimes we're having those conversations about a potential school move for sixth form. Some families are considering an IB environment versus an A-level environment. Pre-U's are very helpful now at the moment. I really like those qualifications. A lot more schools are doing them. And then we'll look ahead to, if you were to choose, and let's map out these A-levels or these IB higher levels, what university subjects that would either open up, or, as is the case with the British university system, which university subjects that would remove. If you haven't selected A-levels X, Y, and Z, you can now no longer apply for perhaps medicine if you've not selected the biological sciences and chemistry route, and what it is that that applicant wants to keep on the table until they're in the sixth form and they're looking at actually doing the application themselves. And then, of course, we get into the application. So once the student has really completed their GCSEs or is in their GCSE year, we start full-time Oxbridge mentoring. So every single member of our team will work with the candidates applying for their exact subject pathway. So I read English literature. I will take those students and mentor them through, a year or 2 years of Oxbridge level extension material. So we never go over what school is doing. I would say about 85% of our applicants are at the strongest possible schools. So the teaching they're getting for A-levels, IB is very, very good. I'm not going over any of that material, nor my colleagues. Instead, we're looking at, if it's my subject, we're really pushing towards theory. We're looking at Old English. We're maybe looking at writers from the early modern period they've never encountered on their A-level course. We did Skelton the other week and Wyatt. So we're really looking at stretching these really bright applicants up to a sort of university level so that when they come to write their personal statements or look ahead to the interview, they're already fizzing with information and excitement for the sorts of things they might want to talk about at interview or put in a personal statement. And then more practically, as we go through the application cycle, we do full-time private tuition for students who are looking at things like the MAT test, PAT test, the TSA. Oxbridge now has this whole host of pre-interview assessment tests that they ask students to sit. We believe in preparing for those and preparing well. And then we look ahead to the interviews and we go through mock interview season of having the students meet a series of my other colleagues who, again, will interview them in their subject, but they haven't necessarily met them before. So we create that new interview environment. We do a lot of work with former Oxford and Cambridge admissions tutors who support the students on saying, this is what I was looking for in interviews. This is what I'd want you to show to me. And we really mentor them through the entire process. So I will normally have a student or family with me for 2 or 3 years. It's frightening how quickly that goes. Some of the people that I first supported are my colleagues now, which is really quite terrifying. So it goes very quickly.
Yes, that is really interesting, isn't it? And I mean, it's a really thorough process, isn't it?
Yeah.
And but it's interesting what you say, that it's complementary and over and above what they are getting at, extremely good schools as well. But I also think that for anyone watching this is a really interesting message about, to start this process as early as possible. but you are talking to people, whose children are aged 14 and above, is that it's effectively never too early to start. And because it's an incredibly competitive world, and you must well put your child in their best possible position. So, okay. But could you also perhaps talk a little bit about the law school side and the med school side as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So medicine as an application route and law as an application route actually have a lot of the same admission steps and application steps as an Oxbridge application. So law, for example, a lot of the top law programs at various universities want you to have taken an exam called the LNAT. They want you to sit that in advance, and the universities considering your application place a lot of weighting on that score as to whether to take the candidate through to the next assessment stage and maybe thoroughly read their personal statement. Oxford, for example, wants the LNAT, but so too does King's College London, UCL, LSE, Durham. So we make sure that we're working with candidates on LNAT preparation across the summer, past papers, tuition, the full suite of preparation there. We will also be guiding on LNAT university choice strategy. We don't think it's entirely sensible to choose 5 universities that require the LNAT, because if you have a bit of flu on the day, you don't do your best, that knocks out 5 university choices. So we really make sure to guide applicants on, there are some fantastic universities. Exeter is one, brilliant law degree, doesn't require the LNAT. We try to advise students to make a sensible selection between LNAT universities and some that don't require it. Medicine, similar thing, combination of strategic advice with practical steps. So everybody applying for medicine, again, does have to do a pre-test, but here there are 2 types, the UCAT or the BMAT. Some universities want one, some want the other. These tests are quite different. So we'll work with students from an early stage to determine which of these suits you better. Do you therefore want to put more BMAT universities, less BMAT universities? How are these universities going to grade or weight what's called your situational judgment test? It's part of the UCAT. And really having a look at making sure that for medicine, you can only apply to 4 medical programs, how they can put themselves in the best position to get as many of those 4 offers as possible. And of course, for medicine, everybody is interviewed. Should you get to that stage, anywhere giving a medical offer, it's contingent on interview performance at that final stage. We do all the same interview preparation, mock interviews. We mock interview for the traditional style, for the MMI rotational style. The medics, I always feel for them, have pretty much got their work cut out for them. And Oxbridge is sometimes not the first choice for our medics. They still teach the traditional style medical course rather than an integrated style. Some students don't want that. So we will have always a host of medics applying who aren't necessarily Oxbridge applicants, but they're doing the same preparatory program. So yes, medicine, absolutely, we will take on as well.
That is really fascinating. And look, we've got a few people who've joined the call now. If you've got any questions that you'd like to put to Alicia, this is a great chance. I mean, of course, you can contact them directly, and the contact information is on our website as well. But if you've got any question, I bet you whatever you put into the comment box, someone else watching either now or afterwards, because they might catch up on, a bit later on IGTV, they will be so grateful that you've asked it. So I'm sure you'll back this up, Alicia, but no question is too basic, too small, too repetitive, as it were. Is that I think it's a minefield. It's really difficult, and A, for the applicant, and B, for the the parent, because inevitably these systems are always slightly adapting, and we were doing this 30 odd years ago. It's bound to be a lot different to when we were doing it, and every parent really just wants the best for their child, but they want to give them the best chance possible. So okay, now there are other businesses, other services out there who are helping, guiding students through this process. What do you think makes Oxbridge Applications different? What's the USP?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's difficult to say more than we are unequivocally the best, but that in this case does happen to be quite true. We're founded back in 1999. We are the long-standing experts. It's our book that you see in Waterstones or on Amazon that we reissue every year about the whole process. Here's my one. Grab it for you all. We write this. So you want to go to Oxbridge, We
Brilliant.
publish this. We
Hold
send
it
it
up a
out.
little bit higher, then we can all see. Okay. Yeah.
There
Okay.
you go.
Brilliant. Yep. Okay.
There should be copies of this in every school library because we send them out every year to
Yes.
every careers room. Um, but more than that, myself and the team believe in and offer total subject specificity of preparation. Our competitors can't do that. So if we have got a candidate who's looking to apply for archaeology and anthropology, they will be working with an archaeologist and anthropologist graduate. If we have a student applying, as we do this year, for Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic, they will be working with a Cambridge Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic graduate. I think a lot of small-scale support outfits have to kind of put their Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic applicants with the history group, or you can't operate at total subject specificity. There's over 56 subjects available at Oxford or Cambridge. We offer total subject match, total university match, full support the whole way through. And our anecdotal evidence of, sometimes I will have parents say, you know, my student is applying with these particular circumstances, and do you think they've got a good chance at this college? This year group is my 11th year of applicants going through. I can remember, well, 6 years ago, that was the case. And I remember that student who's similar to your child the year before last, and they successfully got into Pembroke by doing this. Or so you also want to have that kind of historical knowledge of people whose full-time work this is with applicants. And most importantly, something that unfortunately was lost during COVID, but I'm so thrilled has resumed. We have the full-scale, large central London offices. That means we're able to work in person.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people over the pandemic, while Zoom has allowed us to be a little bit more agile, and people can, if they want, work with us from the comfort of their homes, we have and have always had full offices that have tuition rooms, consultancy rooms, all designed like Oxford and Cambridge tutorial rooms. We're walking distance from schools like Westminster, where a lot of our student clients come from. We're a quick tube away from places like St Paul's, so a City of London school. So a lot of our students find us easily accessible in terms of our location, and parents as well.
Brilliant, thank you for that. And I hope that answers a lot of questions for people who are watching, and which I also think that sort of brings me nicely onto the experiences of the last 18 months. You know, I mean, there's not a family in the land that has not had to adapt to COVID, and there's not a business in the world that hasn't had to adapt as well.
Yeah.
But through the sort of lens of a business, but also you know, you are specifically helping families. What have you adapted to, and have you got sort of examples of families and case studies of how you've helped people, and if there is a lesson for going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been amazed by the resilience that all of these young people have shown this year, because to move to online schooling, and the resilience of parents as well, guiding them through that at home, has just been incredible. A challenge for us has been, of course, we work quite intensively with the applicants and the students every year. We see them a couple of times a week. I certainly felt in the beginning a little bit apologetic about adding another Zoom meeting to their schedule in the day. There was no other way really to meet. Although as soon as we can, one of my lovely applicants last year quite literally lived around the corner from me. I was able to go and sit in the garden, and we did our poetry class at a distance in the garden, which was really quite nice. But over the pandemic, we, like everybody, had to go online. It meant that the offices were temporarily closed. Families and students we used to see in person, we had to meet with digitally. But the upside of that was it did mean that we were supporting applicants in the best possible way that year, because all of the interviews went online as well. So in the past, Oxbridge has always interviewed in person. Oxford had me there physically for 4 days, having 4 interviews at 3 colleges. It was a residential experience. But as of last year, and the same is true this year, the universities have put their interviews on Microsoft Teams, Zoom. The students are meeting the professors over a screen. We found, well, at least we're practicing that way, because it's no good us going back to in-person work if what we're really needing to do is help the student understand how they're coming across in a digital environment. I'm really hoping that next year, both Oxford and Cambridge return to in-person interviews. I certainly felt that was a slightly different experience that had value in and of itself.
No, I totally agree. And I think I know the answer already, but I'd like you to articulate it. But what do you find the most rewarding part of what you do?
Yeah, I love it. Well, apart from that, I love that the students, when they achieve the offer from Oxford or Cambridge or from medical school, from law school, in fact, whatever university was their dream university, you have made
Oh, you've gone quiet. We've Okay. So we lost you for a second. So Lisa, I'm gonna, because it's such an important answer. Start
Mm.
again. So
Okay.
the most important part of what you do.
The most important part of what I do is seeing the students achieve whatever their personal goal was in the first place. So for a lot of them, it's an offer from Oxford or Cambridge, which I personally think is completely life-changing. So too is an offer to read medicine or law, wherever their dream university may be. But on a day-to-day basis, because those offers come out at a set time. So there's that wonderful January euphoria when the Oxbridge results come out. But throughout the year, myself and my team do this because at heart, we're all academics. I've got postgraduate degrees, we're all there working with the students who we are continuing to share our enthusiasm for our subject. It's not everywhere that would allow me to teach Old English, which is effectively another language, to 17-year-olds. It's first or second year undergraduate material. And I'm lucky enough to have a little collection of really bright, really enthusiastic young students who want to increase their subject knowledge level above really what's available to them on the A-level syllabus. And each of them has their own interests. We're able to respond to those. Every student is completely different. And we don't teach a set syllabus. So I'll have one student doing completely different work from the other. And that's the same across all subjects. So from an academic perspective, it's endlessly interesting.
Yeah, no, I can see that. It's well, again, is taking a child who thrives in that environment, loving that subject. And
Yeah.
I guess what is really interesting, I'm a parent myself, is the environment these days looks so competitive, whether it's law school, med school, Oxbridge, or the entire university process. And it seems that you've got numbers of students applying at record highs. From a sort of slightly more kind of top-down perspective, what advice would you give to applicants and their families, who are embarking upon the process of applying to university full stop?
Yeah, okay. Get ready early. So much of the stress and confusion can be removed by making some key strategic decisions early on. And by early on, I would normally mean it's great to have a discussion when your student is 14, but the absolutely essential discussion really should happen when they're selecting their sixth form subjects. So that's when they're in year 11 and school is asking them to choose A-levels, IB subjects, because that decision really does affect what they can and indeed cannot apply for at university. And a lot of students don't realize that. And I will have conversations with them where they say, I think I want to read engineering. Yes. And I'm looking at their A-levels thinking, I'm not sure I can really tell you that you're a viable candidate for that because you're missing a key subject, or school has offered further maths, but the candidate hasn't taken it and they haven't realized what knock-on effect that might have for some quantitative courses. So the absolute best thing to do is to have a discussion before A-level or IB selection stage. This is still with an eye to university. For me to just walk the student and the family through, this selection would lead to that, this selection would lead to that. It then means an element of worry about, well, do I have the right ability to apply for whatever I want is somewhat removed. And apart from that, I would also say, enjoy it. Try and help, if you're a parent, try and encourage and support your student to really be empowered to apply for whatever it is they love and have a passion for. I often see a lot of applicants coming in and telling me, well, I really love Spanish, but I better apply for economics because I really want to work in finance. And I say, well, not at all. you can apply for finance successfully with a Spanish degree. But let's talk about how. So please do encourage your students to really apply for whatever it is their academic passion is, because the UK system is such that these are full-time academic university degrees, and you've really got to love what you do in order to apply for it competitively and then do the degree. So I would say really, really encourage your student, or if you are a student, really apply for whatever it is you genuinely love reading about and exploring.
I think that is outstanding advice, and it's exactly, again, as a parent, you really, really important to be able to impart that further on. So thank you so much for sharing that. And that we've taken up a lot of your time, but it's
No, not at all.
it's really interesting. I think it's just, I feel we've got such an expert in our midst here, but it's there's so many questions that we could go on and ask you. But in fact, one that has come in is around the topic of deferred entry versus not, and the notion of taking a gap year, not taking a gap year.
Yeah.
And again, in your experience, and obviously you've got an Oxbridge hat on, but you've got a wider university hat on. What's your advice to someone who's perhaps thinking about a gap year? Are they best off applying deferred, or applying, getting in place, and then going for deferred? I mean, what's your best advice?
So here my advice really would change depending on what subject they were looking to study and whether Oxbridge is included here. To start with Oxbridge, this is the only university where I say, please don't apply specifically deferred. It's highly unlikely you'll be given a place. Oxbridge hand select their particular tutorial group on a year-by-year basis. Anybody they are making an offer to, they are doing so with the other candidates in mind, and they want to see you that next October. To make a deferred offer to anybody applying to Oxbridge, the university is having to say, not only are you the best this year, but you're so good, we assume you are better than any of the forthcoming competition next year. And so in all my years doing it, they almost never do that. They would rather that you took a gap year and applied to them on that gap year, if a gap year is what you want. If you are applying to Oxbridge, be prepared to take that offer and take it up the coming October. Don't put deferred on your form. Then when it comes to a gap year, again for Oxbridge, before I widen it to other universities as well, a gap year is absolutely fine and can be beneficial for some subjects. So languages, if you're able, hopefully next year, to go abroad, I can absolutely see how that would increase your ability and proficiency in a language. Sometimes subjects like history of art, archaeology, history can actually benefit from a gap year. I'm not saying you have to take one. The majority of applicants are actually still successful at just the applying straight from school stage. And the other advantage of a gap year for Oxbridge is that you may, of course, be holding your results. So you may have got A star, A, which would mean that when you apply, if you're given an offer, it is not conditional. It's an unconditional offer. You are in. You're holding your results. But, and this is why it is a subject by subject basis, Oxbridge are nervous about gap years for anything that is really a quantitative subject. So maths, engineering, physics, Physical and natural sciences, they feel, and I agree, because I will see this in the students, that when you have finished that classroom environment and you've left a taught environment, your ability to keep up that material actually falls away. Yeah. And so that when they see you, you're a little bit rusty. And actually the moment of finishing A-levels to then starting Oxbridge is actually closer to a year and a half than it is a year. So in those cases, we see gap year students be less successful and less desirable for Oxbridge. For other universities, it's a little bit more of a mixture. A lot are happy to see a deferred application, particularly for an arts or humanities course. Gap years, I think, can be beneficial, particularly if a student has felt they're a little bit burnt out by the end of sixth form, they'd quite like a break. One thing I would say is do make use of your gap year. Yes. And by that, I mean, try if you can, and I appreciate that some of the students would feel differently, to not just have it be a bit of a jolly. The universities do like to see that you've done something valuable, even if that's getting a job. and just working during that gap year, earning some money, maybe doing a bit of traveling at the end. Universities now are so also attuned to making sure that gap years are not an extension of one's privilege. So I'm constantly crossing off of people's UCAS forms. I'm doing a chalet season or a ski season or going to Kenya for months. I was saying, well, okay, we want to see you doing volunteering in your gap year, but in a much more, in a way that didn't cost you necessarily. Using that gap year in a way that seems, that was less for your sort of fun than it was for perhaps a more genuine purpose, particularly if it can be connected to your academic purpose. Have you gone and done a research trip? Are you volunteering back at your school and teaching your own subject? Are you volunteering in a care home? You're looking at medicine, biochemistry, biomedical science. A gap year itself is something now to be judged very, very carefully about how you are showing to the university that you will be of more value to them because of the gap year, rather than that the gap year was just kind of a bit of a fun break. But I would say anybody who wants to do the ski season, the Kenya trip, anything like that, university goes by quickly. You're finished at 21. A lot of my friends went off and did that straight away after university. So that opportunity is not going anywhere. It just may be a more strategic idea to take that kind of time off in a real, I'm having a total break type way after university would sometimes be my suggestion. But it really depends case by case.
Thank you very much for that. And I think actually, again, for anyone watching, it's incredibly important advice, particularly as you say, you know, hopefully the world is opening up. You know, not every country in the world is going to be open to people coming from the UK, but hopefully, you know, we are moving to a world of a sort of freer travel and things. And I would completely concur with that. But, you know, it must be a gap year with purpose, not not a gap year which is just about drifting and you know, and taking stock and wasting time, as it were. And incredibly important to be able to put that narrative to it as well, which is, you know, I think is really important. So look, my final question, it's been fascinating. It's been such a joy to talk to you, but
thanks, Sarah.
Well, just so insightful. But yeah, it's been a really long, well, I used to say it's been a really long year, but it's been a really long 18 months. And, you know, but disruption continues a bit, you know, I mean, it does look as if, you know, fingers crossed, public exams will go ahead, and we are beginning to learn to live with COVID. I think, you know, the notion of post-COVID is really not within our grasp at this point. But as we embark on this, you know, we're not embarking on a new academic year. We're already at sort of half term of, you know, the first term. But what advice would you have for families now, you know, about what they should be doing as a summary message in this incredibly important stage in a young person's life?
Recover. Take your time. It's been really hard. I think while applying to university is important, young people probably have, if you're a parent, there are probably some other things to make sure that your child feels all right about before we necessarily worry about university. Just how are they adapting to either being back at school? Do they feel okay about the way that they think kind of exams are going, or is everything all right with them in terms of their friends and their lives, etc.? All of those things were so disrupted during COVID. And actually something I would say is, and I work with lots and lots of young people, but the ones who are better able and better equipped to go through, say, the university application process, and that can be quite intense, are those who actually in all other aspects of their lives are kind of feeling all right, are feeling happy and supported. And if those aspects aren't in place, if they don't feel like confident, happy, kind of bubbly young people, going through the motions of a university application can be quite challenging. So my advice would be, I can give endless advice about university and all those things, but COVID's been a really difficult time, particularly in education. If you're a family, just take the time to relax and recover and just, you know, enjoy this Christmas, kind of really get back to what's important and checking that the student first and foremost is all right, and that they kind of feel in a position to go forward with balance and strength and everything like that. And then we can think about university applications. But I would say just recovering is the priority.
Very sound advice. Alicia, thank you so much for your time. I'd love for you to come back and talk to us again later in the year, because what I think is, what has really struck out to me is it's never too early to start, and it's never the wrong time, as it were. So for anyone watching, I hope that this has answered some of your questions. I'm sure you'll have plenty more. But for me, the summary message is get ready early, and enjoy it. And make sure that you're guiding your child to enjoy the process, but also to choose a subject that they love and have a passion for, because 3 to 4 years at university is a long time if it isn't something that they feel that strongly about. So these and so thank you so much, and I'm sure that there'll be plenty of people who would love to follow up with you afterwards. But Alicia, thank you very much for your time as ever, and thank you to everyone for joining us, and also for sending in your questions in advance as well. So Alicia, thank you very much indeed. We're going to share this on IGTV, across LinkedIn and all the other channels. So if you've enjoyed this, please can you all share this far and wide, because I think this is really, really important and insightful advice. So Alicia, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.